Our dear children, Sophie and Jack, we congratulate you on this beautiful day, your wedding day. May happiness always be in your home. And to have a place, we give you an apartment from all your relatives. It is yours now. And you, Sophie, are the mistress there. So let them trample their soon little feet. Olivia handed her son a bunch of keys with a red bow and kissed him. And now to her daughter-in-law Sophie. Harry hugged the newlyweds and said, "Be happy, children, and we'll have a good time if you're all right." The parents went to their table and Sophie asked, "Did you know?" "No. It's a surprise, just like it is for you, Sophie. I mean, we don't have to think about the apartment at all now, and we don't need a loan. Just wait and see." Mom. Sophie's mother, Emma, came up to the newlyweds. "Jack, Sophie, congratulations. May God grant you the friendship and the happiness of your family." She held out a beautiful gift envelope and hugged her son-in-law and daughter. Sophie knew what the gift had cost her mother. In the envelope was the money from the sale of Grandma's room. That room, or rather its surrender, was a substantial addition to her mother's small salary. A teacher of French language and literature. Before the wedding, her mother said to Sophie, "Daughter, I know how hard it is when you marry into a family without a dowry. Yes, it doesn't seem to be customary now. But in fact, everything is the same as it used to be. I don't want anyone to hurt you. What's the matter, Mommy? Jack seems to have great parents. You saw him." "Sophie, it's because of what I saw that I'm doing what I think is right now. You'll see later. I have to think about you now, for you and for Daddy. You're still very young, so listen to me. This is the money for the down payment on the loan. There's enough here. You'll earn together what's yours alone, and without relying on anyone else. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Mom. Thank you. That's good. You always were a smart girl." Sophie and Jack met a year ago, in the winter, getting off the bus. Sophie lost her balance on the slippery sidewalk and fell, breaking her heel and getting very dirty in the muddy snow. "Are you all right, girl?" "Not dead yet." Sophie looked up at the boy who was helping her up. He stared at her in amazement and froze. "What? Did I tear something up too?" Sophie cocked her head to see her coat. "No, I just stained it a little. Look at me." Sophie turned around and looked at the young man again. He took off his glove and gently ran his finger down her dirty cheek. Then he said, "You have the most beautiful eyes I have ever seen in my life. Like the sea in the deep." Sophie got her green eyes from her father. Illness took him away when Sophie was 15, and she missed him very much. Jack could not have paid her a better compliment, and from there, everything was fine. Jack wooed her beautifully. He tried to spend as much time with Sophie as possible, and after spending time with her, he realized that she was not the type of girl he could live with and then break up with. So he did not try to rush things and ask her to move in with him. Hopelessness and romance were wonderfully combined in Sophie, where Jack couldn't even think one step ahead. Sophie thought 10 steps ahead. How do you do that? It wouldn't have occurred to me to put those sanctions in the contract. Sophie laughed, and I'm a chess champion. She kissed her fiancé on the nose. My father made an effort, put me in a section, and generally oppressed me with education. And Jack was left to wonder how this nice fragile girl younger than him by almost 10 years quietly disposed of papers and reports, over which he sometimes sat for hours. Sophie didn't follow in her mother's footsteps. She didn't want to go to teacher training. She chose economics. So after some time, Jack fired his chief accountant, to whom he had accumulated a lot of questions, and hired his future wife. Business went much better. Although at first Sophie was afraid. After all, she had very little experience. But then she realized she could handle it, and she calmed down. I was given such a treasure. Not only was she beautiful, but she was smart. Jack couldn't stop talking. Jack's parents and relatives liked Sophie too. Olivia, After meeting her, said, "The girl is good. She's good for us. The main thing is that she's right for me. Right, Mom?" Jack hugged his mother and winked at his father. Sophie and Jack's sister got along very well too. Close in age, they were very different in personality. Sophie quickly realized that to get along with her sister, all she had to do was listen to her endless monologues about fashion and guys and occasionally make round eyes, ahing and agreeing with her. It wasn't hard for her. And Mia, getting the use of free ears, was perfectly happy. A couple of months after the wedding, Sophie and Jack were expecting his parents to visit. Mom had gone to a sanatorium, and Jack's parents were supposed to come over to wish their son a happy birthday. "Jack, bring all the plates that are on the table and don't forget the napkins." Sophie was worried. This was her mother-in-law's first visit to them. The ringing of the doorbell made her wince. She wiped her palms on a towel and went to meet the guests. "Hello. Hello, children." Olivia held out a box of cake to Sophie. Jack helped his parents take off their coats, and Olivia cocked her head. "They are very well settled." "Well done, girl. It's clean and cozy." Of course, it needs renovation, but it is nice as it is. The evening passed quietly. Parents complimented Sophie's cooking, talked about their travels and their attempts to find work. "Son, you should take her in. I feel better." "No, Mom, that's not a good idea." "I know, Mia. What kind of a worker is she? All we do is fight, and just let her prove herself. Don't keep trying to decide everything for her. Oh, when you have kids of your own, you'll understand." By the way, Olivia looked at her son and daughter-in-law. "No, not yet." "No," Jack smiled. "So excited to babysit the little ones." "Well, we'll wait." "Sophie, what did you put in your tea?" "It's delicious. Peppermint, the kind of tea Daddy liked, not only tasty, but healthy too." "Well done, kids. Have you thought about renovation? Then the kids will come, and it will be hard to do repairs. Only cosmetic ones will do. You have money lying around that was given as a wedding gift." "There is, Mom, but we need it for something else." "What do you need it for, son?" Olivia looked at her son puzzled. "We're planning to take out a mortgage later." "What for?" The woman's eyebrows shot up. "Don't you have enough room in a 2-bedroom apartment?" "No, of course not. We don't need to have this conversation right now. Where's the cake? Do I have to blow out the candles tonight, or what?" Jack got up and put his hands to his sides. "Wife, let's have dessert while it still fits me," he laughed. Harry looked at his son carefully and nodded gently. His father understood, rightly so. He had lived with his trembling soulmate for nearly 40 years and knew her assertiveness and practical mind very well. Of course, she would not let the matter rest for nothing. But her son would get a reprieve now. If he fails, then he will have to intervene. They ate the cake, and the parents began to go home. Olivia, saying goodbye, told Jack in his ear not to be in complete submission to his wife. Getting out of that state afterwards is very difficult. "Mommy, you judge by your experience." Jack kissed his mother on the cheek and laughed. Olivia playfully slapped her son on the back of the head. She had to stand on her tiptoes to do it. Jack was growing into his father. A couple of weeks after her parents arrived, Sophie was looking in the file for the marriage certificate she needed to provide for the insurance and came across the papers for the apartment. She hadn't seen these papers. She thought the apartment had been registered under the new rules and they hadn't received the certificate. It was executed through the registry. But it turned out that the apartment was purchased before the new regulations came into force, and the certificate was right here. Sophie looked puzzled at the box where the owner was listed. Very interesting information. The apartment did not belong to Jack at all, but was registered to Olivia. Sophie rummaged through the file. Maybe there was something else, but there wasn't any other paperwork concerning the apartment. She wondered, then glanced at her watch and hurried. She was already late. In the evening, she asked Jack, "Jack, who does the apartment belong to?" My mother. I see. So she didn't register it for you? No. There's a lot of complicated paperwork, so we decided to keep it that way for now. Sophie, what are you doing? It's my parents. No, I'm fine. It's okay. Sophie turned back to the table to cut the bread. By the way, Mom brought up the whole renovation thing again yesterday when she stopped by. Sophie put the knife down and sat down. I haven't told you yet. Well, we won't be renovating now. Sophie took her husband's arm and put it to her stomach. She did. Sophie. Yes, honey, you're going to be a daddy in a few months. Sophie gave birth just a little bit ahead of schedule to healthy twins. There was no end to the excitement. And when the excitement died down, Jack got to work on the paperwork and registering the twins. He arrived at his parents' house. Father was at work, but he needed just the mother. No, Jack, I'm against it. Olivia put a plate in front of her son. They are kids. We can't do anything with the apartment until they come of age. When you refused to register Sophie, I understood it, and she didn't want to change the documents and stayed at her mother's place. When I refused to change the registration, you also nodded approvingly and agreed. But now these are my children, your grandchildren. Jack, that's right. You never know how life is going to work out. What if it's hard for you to support a family like this? Would you have to leave the apartment to Sophie and the kids? No, that's not what we bought it for. What was Mom for? What were those gestures at the wedding for? Surprise the family. Who needs a show? Jack, watch your language. I'm approaching this from a practical point of view. Besides you, there's Mia. She's getting married, so what? Buy another apartment or trade that burden with Daddy. I wonder when you were going to tell me that we have to move out at any time if she got married. Wait, is that why you insisted on renovating? You wanted us to invest the money we got for the wedding. And it didn't bother you that most of it was the money Emma gave us. I mean, the apartment isn't ours, but the money is shared. We had to put it in there. Well, Mom, you're a very, very practical woman. Did your father know about this? No, he didn't ask and I didn't tell him. I see. Jack pushed his plate away and got up. I'll go now. It's getting late. Sophie's up there alone with the kids. It's all right. She's a mother. She can manage. Mama, she only has 2 hands. Jack drove home and tried to stay calm. Sophie must not show her condition. She is absolutely not allowed to be nervous. After the birth, she was found to have some changes in her heart rhythm, and the doctor has forbidden any stress. Jack, Sophie came out of the bedroom and closed the door, putting her finger to her lips. Sha, I just put her down. How are you? I'm tired of waiting. Do you want some supper? I'll be as hungry as a wolf. Jack put his arms around his wife and held her close to him. Wait, you were going to your parents' house. I was. Didn't your mother feed you? Sophie squinted at him mockingly. I don't believe it. Jack frowned and lowered his eyes. Jack, what are you doing? Sophie, here's the thing. My mother refuses to sign the children in. Sophie smiled. And me too. I'm gonna sign them in without asking. Where are you from? Jack looked at his wife in surprise. I told you not to. You don't have to do that. My mom is willing to sign them in until we buy an apartment or a house. I decided to do it my way. You were absolutely right, and that apartment is in my mom's name, I remember. By the way, why do you have the papers? I don't remember. I think the meters were changed, something like that. My mom gave them to me. Is that why you kept pushing back on the whole renovation thing here? Yeah, and that's why I've been putting money in the account on a regular basis all this time. Jack, we can buy an apartment, but better yet, let's look for a house. Of course, we can't do it without a loan. But we'll have a down payment, and the interest isn't as high as the rent. It will be our house, where we'll be the real owners, and we won't have to quarrel with anyone else about how and what we want to do. And we'll fight with Mom too. Peace is better than fighting. Jack, nobody needs this conflict. We just need to make sure we don't depend on anyone. This apartment belongs to Mom. Fine, let her keep it. Then why did they give it to her? Let's consider that they gave us not an apartment, but an opportunity to live here and raise money for our own home. That is also worth a lot, right? And a little display at the wedding is better. Forgive and forget. Whatever it is, she's your mom, and she's worried about you for me or for the kids. She worries, of course, but she doesn't have to at all. I'm not her child, I'm her grandchildren. Well, grandchildren are my children. I have to worry about them. Yes, of course they are, and so are yours. Sophie kissed her husband. Maybe I would have thought differently a year ago, but I understand her a little bit now. Just a little bit. Sophie laughed. Jack took his wife's hands and kissed them one by one and said, I got the smartest and most beautiful woman in the world to be my wife. Sophie, I love you. I love you too. Let's go out to dinner before the kids wake up. 6 months later, they moved into a new house. They had to work hard until they could find something suitable. They had to think about the future. So they looked for a neighborhood with a daycare center and a good school. Sophie, hello. Olivia went into the kitchen and washed her hands first. Hello, Olivia. Sophie smiled and handed her mother-in-law the spoon with which she had fed her daughter. The mother-in-law gladly took the baton. The little ones sat like birds on high chairs with their mouths open, waiting for the delicious fruit puree their mother had prepared. Feed them. I'll check the mail. Jack was supposed to send the papers. Sure, go. When do you have time to do everything with the kids and the house and work? I can't do anything. Sophie laughed. Now you are here. I'll have time now, and I can even wash my hair. And this is a celebration. Sophie laughed and came out of the kitchen, and Olivia turned to the children. Here's to Mommy, you two. Here's to Daddy. The kids obediently opened their mouths, where there were already a couple of teeth protruding. Wow. Soon you'll be eating Grandma's meatballs. Good for you. Sophie looked into the kitchen and smiled. We had a fight. It's no big deal. But it's hard to set your own rules. As long as the game is on my turf. Thank you, Mommy and Daddy, for teaching me.